Celebrating LAIKA's 15-year anniversary here at OMSI.
Yes!
We hope you've enjoyed the exhibits and the films and hope you come back or tell your friends. We have events every weekend just like this with special guests from LAIKA, and we'll engage you guys with some questions. You should have mostly plenty of time to get those answered. You can find all the information on our website at omsi.edu/laika-at-omsi, or you could probably just Google it. So the way this event goes, I have a couple housekeeping announcements. Then we're gonna have a half an hour interview with our special guest, Steve Emerson, the visual effects supervisor at LAIKA. And with our lovely moderator, Mary Luz, who you might know as a meteorologist, reporter, and anchor from KPTV.
No.
What is it? Coin 6. I keep getting it wrong. Coin 6. I'm going to update my notes. Yay! Welcome. Thanks so much for doing this with us.
It's the only one I haven't worked at. It's KPTV.
I was going to give you credit for all of them. We'll just go with that.
We're close.
So for the Q&A portion, we're going to bring the house lights up and we are going to call on you. We just ask you to speak loudly. We would normally kind of pass microphones around, but you know, COVID and all. So we'll just repeat the questions so the audience can hear in case you can't. And then just, yeah, it's been working fine so far. So, okay, I'm almost done. Housekeeping. And with that, I would like to turn it over to Mary Luz. Let's give her a warm welcome.
Oh, there it goes. Should be here. Yep, I am here. Thank you so much. It's nice to see all of your faces out there, what I can see of them, with masks, and thank you for coming out in the midst of all of this craziness that continues. We want to, of course, welcome you to this screening of the Boxtrolls, and hope that you enjoy it. Again, we're going to be chatting here with Steve Emerson for about a half an hour, and then we'll open it up to audience questions, and I'll remind you at that point in time. But again, we're going to be watching the Boxtrolls. It was nominated for an Oscar in 2015 for Best Animated Feature. Joining us tonight to talk a little bit about it is visual effects supervisor from LAIKA, Steve Emerson. So welcome, Steve.
Okay.
So first of all, for those who may have not seen the movie, can you tell us a little bit about the story?
The story of the Boxtrolls. It takes place in the fictional town of Cheesebridge. There is a young boy named Eggs who's been raised by an underground civilization of creatures called Boxtrolls. Now, Eggs believes himself to also be a Boxtroll until the villain in the film, Archibald Snatcher. This, by the way, sounds like it's totally rehearsed. I swear to God, I'm doing this off the top of my head. All right, the villain in the film, Archibald Snatcher, sets off to try and gain entrance into this exclusive club of white hats. And these are the gentlemen in town that eat the finest cheeses in the government buildings of Cheesebridge. And so Snatcher's evil plan is to go about and capture all of the Boxtrolls because the people of Cheesebridge mistakenly believe them to be evil creatures. And when all that starts to happen, basically Eggs' world is completely upended, and he figures out he's a boy, madness, fun ensues. Is that all right? I think I got it. Yeah, that's pretty much it.
I think you did. Yeah,
Okay.
Sounds good to me. Let's get into a little bit about kind of what you do, and we'll talk a little bit about our friend Eggs here, who is not wearing his box at the moment.
No.
But can you explain a little bit about him, because he is actually one of the puppets?
Sure. This is Eggs in his boy outfit. I think you're going to see him in the film tonight. At the very end of the film, when everything, this is a spoiler. I'm assuming most people here have hopefully already seen the film. But in the end, he all right, well, sometime he's going to wear this outfit in the film, and he's going to look cool. But anyway, he had 4 different outfit changes, I believe, in total in the film, which is, again, is for stop motion animation, is a pretty unique thing and something that LAIKA certainly innovated, this idea of actually doing costume changes in the films for the sake of storytelling. And so this, I believe, is his 4th costume he's going to wear in the film. He is approximately 10 inches tall. All of his facial expressions were done through what's called replacement animation, which means that for every frame of film, they actually remove the face. I'll show you, it's cool. They remove the face from the puppet, and then they have another face that they will pick up, and they will snap back on to the puppet. And in the meantime, they will do things. They will, for one frame at a time, pose it and pose around it in order to be able to create the illusion of motion with a 10-inch doll, basically. Puppet, I shouldn't say doll. The hair, I believe, is done using hemp fibers with silicone that was combed through for most of the Boxtrolls. Animators animate the eyeballs using razor blades and eyelids as well. There's a LAIKA animator named Kyle Bell here in my house, by the way, tonight, too. He's sitting over there. If you're into animation, you should talk to that guy. All right. What else can I tell you, Mary?
Hopefully that didn't scare everybody
Yeah.
too much. But that is how they work, and to me it's always been a fascinating thing to see how they actually work. So this is one of what we would call the practical side of what LAIKA does, but there's something that you do, and at least it's a part of it, which is computer aided. Talk about kind of the percentage between the practical or the real things and what happens in the computer.
Sure. Well, generally, when we're making a film at LAIKA, we want to try and make sure that the ratio of practical to computer generated lands somewhere between 7.2 and 8.9%. I'm totally kidding. I have no idea. It's basically what we're doing is the idea is realizing the potential of stop motion animation. That's how it was sort of laid out for all of us. The idea that there was this art form and this way of storytelling that all of the artists at LAIKA were in love with. But if you look back at a lot of classic stop motion films, you'll see things like there aren't a lot of characters, there certainly aren't a lot of costume changes, there aren't a lot of environments. And that's because everything needs to be built, right? Everything needs to be built, and then if it's going to come to life and it's going to move, that all needs to happen one frame at a time. It's an extraordinary effort, but unfortunately for storytellers, it can be somewhat limiting. So the idea was that let's stop limiting ourselves. Let's stop making concessions. Let's tell the stories that we want to tell without limitations. And if we're going to do that, let's use technology. Let's use the computers. But let's do so in a way that is ultimately respectful of the craft and that is heavily influenced and informed by the people that are actually making the puppets. So on the digital side of things, when we're going to do a digital puppet for background performance is when we would typically do that. We don't create our puppet versions in a vacuum. We do so very closely hand in hand with the puppet department at LAIKA. So they're working with us, they're informing us, they're commenting on our work, and then ultimately they're in on the approvals before we put them up in front of a director to say it's worthy of going in the film. But the percentage is hard to say. I will say we're as the films get bigger and bigger in scope, there is the necessity to put more digital elements into the films in order to be able to facilitate the storytelling. But the rule is always, if we can get it in camera, we're going to get it in camera. And we usually do. Yeah.
So your title is Visual Effects Supervisor. You
Yes.
talked a little bit about what it is that you and your team do, but can you explain kind of just for the lay person what it is that your title means and what you do?
Sure, I clean up the mess. These things, these productions, they take a really, really long time. And inevitably, there'll be, a number of many problems that will happen. In addition to that, it's when you put an animator onto a stage for days, weeks, or even a month, things are going to go wrong. And so a big part of my job is to troubleshoot on the fly, to run out to stages when something's gone wrong, and to help try and figure out how we keep the animator going. Up front, I work with all the other creative leads at LAIKA to figure out exactly how we're going to tell the story we want to tell, what's going to be physical, what's going to be digital, what's the shot strategy, we call it. And then in the end, when everything's been captured out on the stages, and we have everything that we think we need for a given shot, that gets sent over to the visual effects department. And then my job is to make sure we take all of that, and in the end, we present something to the director that is representative of whatever it is in his or her mind's eye. So that's the job. And I'm also the one that when things go wrong or if it doesn't look good, I'm the one that gets yelled at.
So the curious thing that I was looking through and was that you've worked in the live action world as well as in the stop motion animation world. Is there a difference in what you do between those two types of filmmaking?
The difference is primarily that we're making our films one frame at a time with much smaller scale sets and little actors. But it really is, it's live action filmmaking is what we're doing. So usually on the visual effects side of things, when we're looking for team members to come join us at the onset of a project, we're looking for people that have experience in live action visual effects. Because we're going to recreate something that's real, that's physical, that's being captured. Which is great, right? What do we do? So recently we started, if you follow, people here watch The Mandalorian, Star Wars, all that. Everything's about like virtual production, right? Virtual production. And so at LAIKA, it's part of our thing. It's our mission statement. It's like we are honoring stop motion animation, but we're pulling technology into the mix. So we start talking about virtual production, and what's funny about it is it's a huge exercise to pull this thing off, and we have to sit down and say, okay, why are we doing this? Why are we doing it? And part of it is definitely an element of we can do it, so let's do it. Nobody else has done it with puppets before. Let's do it. But then at the same time, I'm thinking, okay, so why are they doing it on The Mandalorian? And part of it was, well, the actors hate acting in front of green screens, These guys don't care. So that was honestly, when I did the pitch at the studio, that was one of the things on the list, was like, well, this is why they do it. And it doesn't really apply to us because, the puppets don't care. But my favorite thing about working at LAIKA, without question, is it's moments like this. It's to be able to share the films, to talk about the films. They're such an enormous effort, and they take years to make. And what's amazing about it is you go through this crazy emotional roller coaster ride of a process, and at the end, you get to share it with people that you love and people that you don't know, and there's such an element of pride in doing that. I came up through live action effects in Los Angeles, and I used to work on a lot of films that I didn't want anybody to know that I worked on. I worked on, I think it was called Cold as Ice. It was a Brian Bosworth film, and you may be the first people tonight to know that I actually worked on that movie. So it's an enormous sense of pride, and that's certainly the best part is sharing the outcome.
Just to give people an idea, you keep talking about, the length of time it takes to make these and the length of time it takes just to get one shot. Can you explain how long maybe a movie like the Boxtrolls took to make, and then condense that down and explain like one scene, maybe how long that takes to make? Sure.
On average, the films it's approximately 100 weeks, or roughly, I think of it as a 2-year production cycle. So from the beginning of animation to animation being complete, it's about 100 weeks. We always think it's going to be less, but it always ends up being about that, or maybe sometimes we go a little bit longer. So 2 years of animation production. There's at least 2 or 3 years of pre-production and development, probably even more than that. I don't really get into the mix until about a year before they start animating. But many years prior to animation, they're going through development and pre-production. And then we'll do probably at least another 6 months of post-production. So all in all, I'd say it's probably anywhere from, about a 5-year process. Now, to take it down to a shot level, we'll talk about shot. So animators average 3.5 seconds per week of animation. The average shot, by the way, I didn't pay any attention in math. Like when I was in school, I was like not a math, so thank God. Like I try and keep this as simple as I possibly can. On average, a shot is 100 frames, right? So that's roughly 24 frames a second. Oh, God, help me out. So 124. So it's like 4 seconds.
It's 24 frames a second. Each piece of film is 24 frames a second.
All right. So Dan Breimer, my producer, is here tonight as well. All right. So Dan, how long? 4 seconds is how long?
4 seconds.
Or 4 seconds? 4 seconds is how many frames?
96.
That's the guy. He's doing that without Excel, everybody. All right, so it's from, I like to say we do about a shot a week of animation. It comes off of the stages, it comes over to our side, and depending on the complexity of the shot, it usually takes us about a week or two to turn it around. Yeah. How long?
Figured it out.
How long is 4 seconds? Yeah, let's put that on a cruise ship.
So, as we're watching this movie tonight, what would it be like if your department was not a part of it at all?
Oh, okay. I will say, this is interesting. During the production of Coraline, Henry Selick, who was our director at the time, he wasn't so crazy about computer-generated stuff. He didn't really trust the computers. We definitely used a lot of computers in that film because you have to paint out all sorts of problems and rigging that the animators use. But nevertheless, Henry was pretty adamant that he wanted to stay away from a lot of the CG. But when we finished the film, he got really excited about doing a cut of Coraline that was going to basically just have all the stuff in it, like all the crazy stuff, all the rigs, all like the original animation plates. But the problem is that it was such early days then that things were still pretty chaotic. I think that it was just too much of an exercise in finding all of that, that it never really got done. But so the point of what I just told you is that Henry Selick actually wanted to do exactly what you're asking about. These days, if we actually did that, you would see a lot of odd contraptions, rigging that are supporting the puppets for their performances. But like I said, those all get painted out in post-production. Oftentimes, when we're doing shot work, there are never enough puppets, there are never enough sets, but there's always a need to get animation done. So oftentimes we'll shoot animation in front of green screens, and then we'll go back and shoot the balance of the set or the backgrounds later. So you would certainly see a lot of shots with just green screens. We did, I don't know if everybody here or some of you have seen Kubo and the Two Strings. The opening sequence, which was a crazy collaborative endeavor between the stages and visual effects, and took us a year just to figure out how we were going to do it. But I did put together a cut of that sequence without any of the visual effects in it, and it's essentially Sariatu, who's Kubo's mom, and she's sitting in a boat on a green screen, just doing this for about 4 minutes. So yeah, it'd be very different. It would be, but it would still, if we were, but the thing is, if that was the deal out of the gate, no computers, they would hide the rigs and, people at LAIKA are so darn talented, they'd figure out a way to make it cool. Yeah.
Back to Ray Harry Oswald.
There you go, exactly.
What can you tell us, because tell me a little bit about just your kind of arc, if you will, at LAIKA, and then I'll ask you a couple other things about this film and work in general. Sure,
I was hired during the production of Coraline. There was a lot of debate actually early on about whether or not, when they do the replacement animation, I keep messing up this cord. When they do the replacement animation, this is a single phase here. But a lot of the past films, they'll actually do the top and the bottom separately in order to get a greater range of expression. And that line that spans the face, it needs to be painted out in post-production. So during Coraline, because it was the first film, there was a lot of debate initially about whether or not they were going to get rid of that line or if they were just going to leave it in. And I think they argued about it for probably a good year. And then finally they decided it's got to go, and they needed to put together a team, and they needed somebody to supervise the team. I fortunately had come to get to know some of the folks at LAIKA, including Kyle Bell over here, this animator, and his wife Kristen, who was a recruiter at the studio. And at the time, I was flying back and forth from Portland to Los Angeles to work. And I was at the end of my rope because I had 2 young kids and I didn't want to be traveling so much anymore. And they put in a good word. The timing worked out. I showed up and they told them how I thought I would do it, and then it was crazy. It was like a week later I got hired, and I've been there ever since. So that was my LAIKA story. But where did we start? What was the original
I was
thing?
just going with the arc of how long you've been there and what you've done. But so
Okay.
you've been there since Coraline. So Boxtrolls is definitely part of your
Yeah.
career there. So what was the most difficult thing of making part of making the Boxtrolls?
Boxtrolls was, all right, so Coraline was primarily, a lot of cosmetic work and compositing. Paranorman, we started to open up the worlds and we started to integrate more digital into them in order to be able to handle the scope of that film. We started doing more background character performances and some set extensions. We did a good job on Paranorman and suddenly everybody was trusting us. When we got to Boxtrolls, it was like, we're gonna make an even bigger movie with more crowds, more locations, bigger scope, big wide vistas. We trust you guys now because you didn't mess up Paranorman. How about helping us out? And so that for this particular, it's like all the movies. It comes down to scope because your team size typically, and again, my buddy up here, Dan Breimer, is working to help me out with this, but they want you to make the films with similar resources as the film prior. The problem with that is that the films get they're inevitably more complex and they're larger. So you have to do a lot of creative problem solving in order to be able to pull that off. The Boxtrolls was us figuring out, okay, we want to be able to integrate environments and background crowds into this. Right? How do we do so much more efficiently? And then that set us up for Kubo and the Two Strings, which was a whole other crazy thing. I think of it in terms of like, you know when you first get married, and you get a dog, right? And the dog's sort of getting you ready because you know the kids are coming and it's going to mean a lot of responsibility and it's going to get crazy. Like the Boxtrolls for me was when we bought the dogs, right? And now we're having kids. Yeah.
So is there any technique in the Boxtrolls that you can kind of tell us about that was maybe a first for that team at the time?
Sure, there was, in rapid prototyping, they do all the 3D printing of the faces. It was our second film using a color printer to do that, but I do know that they definitely pushed that technology to get a great deal of detail in the faces. All those faces are printed up on 3D printers, and you'll see tonight when you're watching the film, the characters, there's a great deal of line work and color nuance in those faces. So that was certainly a breakthrough for the film. On the visual effects side, we did a lot of work with cheesecloth. So you'll see throughout the film, whenever you see a cloud, whenever you see a smoke effect, you'll see that it has the characteristics of cheesecloth. And I'm saying that, and I'm wondering myself, does anybody even know what cheesecloth is anymore? Yeah. All right, so you'll see cheesecloth throughout the film, and that was certainly somewhat innovative when we were doing the work as well. But again, yeah, a lot of it was just how do we streamline things? How do we integrate new technology in order to be able to handle the scope of something that's much bigger with similar resources as past films?
It sounds like there's a new challenge for every production.
Absolutely, yeah, and honestly, the new challenge is typically it's scope. It's just bigger. It's more stuff, more shots, more effects, more characters, more locations, bigger locations. Let's open the movie with a giant water sequence. You guys, like, to do water in stop motion is crazy. Like, you have to. I know that on Coraline we did a lot of.
Lots of kids here.
It was done with replacement animation, so they would print up on the 3D printers, pieces of plastic. So there was a shot in Paranorman where toilets are overflowing, and they're basically putting plastic in and out on every frame so that it ends up looking like water overflowing. And then there's shots of water running across the floor, and the animators are actually taking like petroleum jelly, like KY jelly and stuff, and they're moving it, and posing it, and moving it through. And then that was like, let's do an ocean. Like, all right, how much petroleum jelly can we get? You know?
So that takes me to the final question,
Yeah.
which was your Oscar nominee.
Yeah.
And how did that feel in 2017?
Oh, thanks for bringing that up, Mary, because we lost.
I know. I'm still bummed about it. Trust me. We screamed at the TV so much that night and every night, every time.
Yeah.
So, yes.
That was crazy.
It was.
The whole the Oscar process, as I've come to learn, I didn't really know anything about it, but now what I've recognized is that the Academy and the visual effects branch, what they're really looking for is an element of innovation. That, and they're also, a lot of them, they've been doing visual effects for a long time. They love in-camera solutions. They love practical effects. They love special effects, like what they call special as opposed to visual effects. So if you look back even like just recently, First Man, 1917, I mean, the pitches for those films were, we're doing visual effects and we're doing them in camera and we're doing them old school. The Academy loves that. For Cuba on the Two Strings, not only were we doing, I mean, right down to the animation, because, you know, in the old days, before computers, kid, if you wanted a monster, you either had to do a stop motion puppet or put a man in a monkey suit, right? So even the puppets themselves and the animation was a visual or special effect. And on top of all of that, it was something, that film in particular was something of a love song to Ray Harryhausen. And you mentioned Ray Harryhausen to anybody in the visual effects branch and their eyes start to well. So we had a lot of things in our favor. And so, yeah, we have to go to the party, but yeah, we didn't get a trophy. The guy who won, Rob Legato, let me hold his trophy. And thanks a lot.
All right. Well, it is time to open it up to audience questions, and we're going to turn the house lights up, so give us just a little bit of a second so we can see you. What I'm going to do is try to describe like what you're wearing or what I'm seeing the best I can when I have hands raised for questions, and I'll call on you.
First question is always the hardest, by the way.
Yeah.
I used to go to a lot of like Q&A things when I was part of a film society down in California, and I always asked first because I knew I would get to ask a question.
Do you want to ask yourself a question?
Yeah. Why won't anybody ask a question?
There's a hand. I see
All right,
right
here we
up
go.
there.
Can you talk about any current projects LAIKA is working on?
Sure, yeah, we're working on a film adaptation right now of a novel called Wildwood. There's a press release that went out recently about the film. It's being directed by Travis Knight, who's Cooper on the Two Strings. We are lucky enough to have a cinematographer named Caleb Deschanel, who's a 6-time Academy Award nominee. So we've won the same number of Oscars, by the way. I keep reminding him that. So, but he's a 6-timer and really just a legend of a cinematographer. So he's also working with us right now. So I mean, that's going to be really, really exciting. The novel itself is written by Colin Malloy, who's the lead singer of the Decemberists. So I'm hoping that he'll also be involved in some way. I really can't say much more than that because I think that's hopefully that was in the press release and I didn't just get in trouble. But I will say that again, it's going to take us a while to get this thing done. It's crazy, it's gorgeous, it's beyond anything we've ever done before, and when it's done, I'll be so excited. I'm certain to share it with everybody. So yeah, fingers crossed. Yeah.
So, in Wildwood, so do you create Forrest card, or do you actually take pictures for it?
Oh, they're going to create it.
Oh, okay.
And it's not. It's the The thing, if people here don't know the novel Wildwood yet, it does take place in Portland, and it is very much something of a love letter to Portland. And the Wildwood, it takes place in what, if you read the book, it's like so obviously Forest Park. I don't know if they literally say it's Forest Park, but they're talking about Forest Park. But yeah, that film, again, we're early days, so we're doing everything in camera right now, believe me. So that's the plan. Go build it. Yeah.
It's a teeny tiny hand up there with a nice Proline shirt on.
Hello. Okay, his name is Archibald Snatcher, okay? And Archibald Snatcher is the villain in the film that you're gonna see tonight. He is, I gotta tell you this about Snatcher. First off, when I was your age, there was a film called Chitty Chitty Bang Bang. And I don't know, you guys know Chitty Chitty Bang Bang? And there's a character in Chitty Chitty Bang Bang that's called, of all the most like horrifying things you could name a character, the child catcher. And the child catcher freaked me out. And so when I saw the first designs of that, it reminded me of the child catcher. So he spooked me. But he's voiced by Ben Kingsley. And I will say the Ben Kingsley vocal performance and the puppet itself, the Archibald Snatcher puppet, I think it's the best we've ever done at LAIKA. I love the puppet. And then Ben Kingsley also won an Annie Award for his performance.
And I know a little secret about how Sir Ben did his recordings.
Oh, okay. So I have to
Yeah, how
ask.
do you do it?
He was lying down.
All
He
right.
was on a couch for a lot of the times, and it was the way that he could get this sort of guttural voice that you'll hear him doing. So,
Very
yeah. And right here, yeah, pinkish sweater, yeah.
Hi there.
Hi.
You mentioned it's early days in Wildwood, and most of the work is being done in camera right now. So what types of tasks are you as a visual effects team doing in the early days?
Spoilers.
Okay, we're looking at the film. We've done 5 of these now, and we know that in a year, resources are going to get really tight. And so then it's when we start to shift gears and we start to talk about, okay, basically, here's the rules, okay? We are always getting as much in camera as possible. If we can get it in camera, we're gonna get it in camera. If we can't get it in camera for whatever reason, right, then we start talking about the area outside the general puppet performance. If it's a main character, that's gonna be a hand-animated puppet performance, physical puppet out on the stages, always the case. If it's interacting with an environment or another character, those physical sets, actual puppets. Once we move beyond that, then the discussion opens up. So we're talking about big, like vistas, skies, background characters, crowds. You know, go read Wildwood, and you'll see there's a lot going on in that film. And again, like what'll end up happening is we'll get to a point where they're going to need to pull us in for some additional help, and we'll start looking at distant areas around puppets, and then also, yeah, you gotta read the book. There's a lot going on. But if you consider those rules and you read the book and you think about the fact that it takes an animator a whole week to do one shot with a puppet, and you're gonna say, all right, they're gonna need some help to get through this one. But they also haven't told us yet when it needs to be done, so very well, maybe we'll just do the whole thing, and then we'll all be here when I'm like retiring talking about it. Yeah. Who else? Are you going there?
There's a little peanut up here, yep, with your hand up. Speak up.
It's okay.
Go ahead.
Why is the boy named A?
Aww.
Oh, that's a good question. The answer to that is I have no idea. Here's what's interesting I'll say about that. The book Here Be Monsters, which it's based on,
I've read that.
the little boy in the book, his name is Arthur. And because the book was so big and dense and there's so much going on in that book, they had to figure out a way to take that and create just sort of 90 minutes of fun. So in doing that, they decided that they were going to focus specifically on the Boxtrolls part of that novel. And then they made a lot of decisions about which Boxtrolls they would hang on to, which characters they would focus on. And then they also decided that the little boy, instead of being named Arthur, he would be named Eggs. I don't know why they did it, but my suspicion is when you see the movie, he has no idea at the beginning that he's a Boxtroll. And if you're living with a bunch of people that are named Pickles and Peanut Butter and Mops and Specs, and I'm Arthur, that may be, a little bit obvious. So I think that they went for something you could pick up at the grocery store. I have no idea. And also, it's just a cute name.
That's so cute.
Way back up at the top, kind of. Yes, I see you. Yes, waving.
For the voice acting part of the movie film, I know that for something like Dark Crystal, I know the puppetry happened, and then they could do like ad-libbing lines, and then the voice actors came in after. As long as they were matching the rhythm, they could choose the lines they wanted. For a stop-motion animation film, does the voice acting have to come before, where you already know the sequence of the tone and the timing of the way the words are gonna work, the lines?
So how it all works, and there's certainly, I'm sure there's some level of creative nuance to every one of the projects, but just the way that I understand is the film will be written, all right? And then they'll go through and they'll start storyboarding. So they'll basically draw the entire film. Then what we do is, because we have a script, they'll go to people typically at the studio. They'll just grab folks that work at LAIKA. Sometimes they'll bring people in from outside that are some professionals. And then they do what's called the scratch track for the film. And that's just sort of just really, it's rough dialogue so that they can get started just putting together all the storyboards and what they call animatics, which are animated storyboards. So there comes a point in the process where you can sit down and watch the movie. Basically, as a whole bunch of drawings with all your buddies that you were just drinking coffee with in the canteen with their voices instead of the movie stars. And so that helps the directors and the story department sort of wrap their heads around the film itself and how successful it is and whether or not they need to make changes. And then they start hiring the actors. And the actors will come in and they'll replace the voices, and then they'll redo a lot of the storyboards at that point as well. So it's one of those things where they do it first with 10 track, and then they go and they hire the actors come in and do their thing, and then we'll redo a lot of the storyboards, and then we get started with the puppets. Yeah?
Oh, right in the middle.
How do you feel about defacing eggs?
How do I feel about what?
Defacing eggs.
Defacing eggs? Oh, you mean taking his face off? Oh, I don't feel bad about it. You want me to do it again?
Do it! Oh.
Yeah, we didn't do that. I wouldn't have a job. We didn't do that, and it's like, I gotta clean this stuff up, and then the animator bumps that, I gotta fix that. I feel really good about it.
Way over here on the right. Or my right.
Isaac Hempstead Wright. He is a Game of Thrones child actor. Oh, I'm blanking on the name of the actor for Kubo, who's also Game of Thrones. But yeah, Isaac Hempstead Wright did Eggs, and he was a child actor that I think at the time he was doing Games of Thrones. Yeah?
I'm trying.
To the
You gotta
internet.
hold your hand up.
I know, it's not working.
You can
All right, you call.
Oh, no, it's okay. Right here.
Still interesting.
Can you talk about a few examples of mistakes that happen on camera that you then clean up afterwards?
Oh gosh, Madame Frou Frou tonight. The villain's gonna get. Spoiler alert! The villain's gonna put on a dress, and then she will perform. And Jason Stallman was the animator on that, and we animated it with these two trees on either side of the stages, or either side of the stage. He probably, over the weeks he was doing that, bumped that 1,000 times. And so in the end, we're very lucky in that the environments that we shoot in there are extremely controllable. This is all indoors, and then we have motion control, which are like these giant robots that'll move your camera, and you can have it do the exact same thing multiple times. So what we'll do in situations like that is we'll make sure that we shoot the puppet performance, but then we'll take the puppet out, and then we'll shoot it again, so that we have everything without Jason bumping into it, and then we can do just some work in the computer to clean it up. But it's a lot of that. It's animators bumping into stuff, rapid prototyping, the group that does the faces. If you think about the word rapid prototyping, that means you're going to do it really fast, and you're going to create a prototype, something that's not even ready for market, mind you. Okay. It's not for making facial performances that are going to be shot using macro photography and then played back as part of a feature film across a 500-foot screen or whatever this is. So inevitably we'll end up with a ton of artifacts. No, I shouldn't say a ton. Sometimes we have to deal with artifacts that we need to clean up. So we do a lot of that as well. But they're amazing what they're able to pull off of that technology. I wish I had a better anecdote, but that's the best I can do. Yeah.
Is there a special kind of camera equipment that you use as opposed to live action film?
No, we're doing them all in Canons. Well, this one I believe was the Canon 5D Mark III. Then we got into the Mark IVs, and now we're using the EOS Rs. So yeah, it's prosumer, I think they would call it. And there's 100 reasons why we have to use those specific cameras. A lot of it's tied into the software that we use to do the stop motion animation itself, which is called Dragon Frame. Compatibility with that. It has to do with lens choices. It has to do with again, like proximity to puppet and the size of the camera. But going all the way back to Coraline. Actually, Coraline, I think we're on Nikons. Do you remember, Kyle?
I'll go with Nikon.
All right, Nikons. But yeah, it's been the Canon line. So yeah, you can go get one of those. We'll make a stop motion film.
Over the last couple of nights, we've had a lot of art students, a lot of budding artists, and people who are into that side of things. But in looking through just the job postings on the LAIKA website today, you don't have to be an artist per se to work at LAIKA. There's a lot of other things you can do there, including in your department. Can you talk a little bit about some of the other things that carry over, like computer science, that kind of thing is what I'm aiming at?
Oh, sure. Yeah. There's well, there's the thing about the visual effects side of things is you've got excuse me. There are the folks that are, so they're very much about sort of the creative side of visual effects. So they're putting together a lot of the pretty pictures. But then there's also the technical side. And these are the people that are making actually like everything run and actually writing the code that drives the tool sets that actually enable us to get these films done in a timely manner and to not have everything fall apart while we're trying to do it. So those are generally the more technical positions, so like technical directors, and they'll go to school, computer science, they're coders, they write tools, they're invaluable. Now the big, the money artists, like the big hit, like, oh my gosh, we're so lucky to have this person, is when you get somebody who's got incredible artistic talent, but then they also got the technical side as well. That's pretty rare. But so I would say, yeah, if you want to get into this stuff and visual effects, and you want to be on the creative side, then yeah, go to art school, or heck, these days, jump on the internet. It's like the software is all cheap now, and like there's an infinite amount of stuff on YouTube that'll teach you what to do. And then if you want to get into more of the technical side, certainly knowing how to code is very helpful. And beyond that, the part of the team that people don't even think about very much, that's incredibly important, is production management. Just knowing how to lead a team. Just convincing a bunch of tired, worn out, frustrated people who are subject to it's a subjective process, and that it's worth it to keep going And by the way, you gotta have that done by the end of the day, or else I'm buying you dinner and you're staying late. But production management also is a big part of what we do.
Anybody else? Yes. What's a dream project that you would like to work on in your career?
A dream project?
Like a theme or a story or anything
Oh.
that you are dying to.
Oh, I can go literal with you because it would be awesome to remake Dreamscape. Do you guys remember Dreamscape?
Yes.
Yeah, that was that movie blew my mind. Yeah, that was pretty awesome. I also, I hope that one day they would consider remaking Jason and the Argonauts and actually use stop motion. I think that would be incredible. My dream, honestly, when I was younger, I really wanted to work on Lord of the Rings, and I had a chance to go out to Weta and go do that. And then my wife and I had this little boy who's now up in college. He's 18. So anyway, I almost did it, but I ended up with something that was far cooler. Yeah. Yes, sir.
As we watch Boxtrolls tonight, are there any special moments, shots, or scenes that visual effects crew did that we should pay specific attention to?
It's a very good question. I would say there's a couple things that I am particularly proud of in the film. One is the Boxtrolls will be chased by Snatcher and his goons, and they're going to run through the city. And there is a moment where they're going to leap over a ledge, and they're going to start sliding down these rooftops and bouncing around, and it's called the rooftop chase. For that particular sequence, when we did it, we had 3 puppets, and we had basically their rooftops for critical contact. So when they would hit a roof, they're hitting a real roof, right? And then they bounce, they hit another roof, and they hit another roof. But you'll see when you see the shots, they're vast shots. They're skies. The city goes on forever. There's really, really extensive what we call set extension work in that sequence. And I think it's some of the best work, well, certainly that we had done to that point was the rooftop chase. It's really slick, clean, you would never know. There's also a moment towards the end of the film where Eggs realizes that Snatcher is going to come after them, and they need to abandon their Boxtroll cavern. So he shows up, and he's looking at them, and he's begging them to leave, and they're just standing all sort of looking at him. That shot is, I think it's about 5 puppets and then 5 digital puppets. And it was everywhere in the marketing. And coming into the project, like just again, these were still early days, we were gaining some trust with the studio and all the other artists to know that not only did we do something that looked so real, like I personally, I don't think anybody would ever know that those puppets along the sides and in the back, that those were digital. But on top of that we used it to promote the film was really, really satisfying. So yeah, background Boxtrolls and the rooftop chase. And look out for the smoke and the fog, because you're going to see the cheesecloth.
I do remember that now that you mentioned it.
Okay.
All right. Anything else that we missed? Anything else that we missed that you want to add to, kind of, I don't know, talk about the Boxtrolls or talk about LAIKA?
Yeah, I would just say, like, especially relevant to VFX. I don't if anybody here goes to a movie these days, or if you go to a Marvel movie, and if you hang out and watch the credits because you want to stay for the little thing at the end that my kid can't leave without seeing, right? You'll see when those visual effects credits roll by, it is extensive. It's usually about 12 different facilities that are in the mix, and honestly, it's thousands of hands that are in the mix in order to be able to tell those stories. The visual effects team at LAIKA, we're a group of, we'll go from anywhere from like 60 to the most we've ever done is 90 artists. On this particular film, I think we landed somewhere in the mid-60s. We did all of the work in-house, and then we also, we didn't outsource any of it. We do, in some capacity, touch every frame of film in these movies, even if it's just to make sure that things are okay. and clean up a little bit of like digital noise or a dead pixel or something like that. So it's an enormous effort that's done by this small team that sits in this room out in Hillsborough, and I get to come and stand up and sort of represent the work. I get to go pick up the trophies. I get to, but the truth of the matter is that I am not the one that's on the box and grinding day in and day out. And so you should know that what you're going to see is it's the combined efforts of a lot of people, many of them Portlanders, and yeah, it's just something I think not only I have personal pride in, but I also think there should be a great deal of civic pride in what we've accomplished as a city in helping to support the artists that ultimately made this film. Yeah.
Thank you so much. This has been a really great experience. We've been defacing eggs. A little creepy, but it's still cool. All right, you guys, thank you so much for all your participation. We'll give you a little break here before we start the movie, but thank you again for coming out tonight, and one more round of applause for Steve.
Yeah, let's get popcorn.